Welcome everyone to Whimsy Woven Stories. Here, we explore gripping tales of real-life twists. Join our storytelling community. Life had been comfortably predictable, almost cozy, for the past several years. For 6 of those years, I had been married to Hannah. Even during the times when our connection wasn't perfect, I believed we were in a solid place. My job demanded a lot of my time and energy, pulling me deeper into my career. Meanwhile, her busy social life sometimes grated on my nerves, but I thought we had found our rhythm, a balance that worked for us. We still made time for each other, like our Saturday night tradition. Sure, there were occasional cracks in our relationship, but they seemed minor, manageable. At least, that's what I thought. Then last weekend happened. Hannah seemed unusually eager to attend a party her employer was hosting. "Jake, it's nothing serious, just some work friends," she said, brushing off my hesitation. Her tone felt almost dismissive, like I was a child pestering her about a harmless gathering. "You should come too, it'll be fun," she added, her voice light, as if she were making a promise. She didn't believe in herself. I decided to go, convincing myself it was about being supportive. But deep down, something fell off. She'd been distant lately, spending more time on her phone than usual. Often she'd smile at her screen, typing away as if in her own little world. Whenever I asked who she was talking to, her replies were vague. "Oh, it's just Emma, or it's work at the party." Hannah disappeared into the crowd almost immediately. She was always the social butterfly, effortlessly moving from one conversation to the next. I stood there, nursing a beer and trying to ignore the uneasy feeling in my gut. But I couldn't shake it. Her behavior wasn't just social, it was different. Her eyes kept scanning the room, like she was looking for someone. I told myself I was overthinking, but something inside me urged me to follow her. I stepped outside into the cool night air, the backyard softly lit with fairy lights that cast long shadows across the grass. At first, I didn't see her, then I heard her laugh, a laugh I knew so well, coming from the far corner of the yard. My heart dropped. There she was, standing with a man I didn't recognize. They were far too close. Her hand rested lightly on his chest, and his arm casually wrapped around her waist. Their heads leaned in, sharing a closeness that wasn't meant for anyone but us. And then they kissed. A wave of disbelief and pain crashed over me. My mind screamed at me to look away, but I couldn't move. I stood frozen, watching as the life I thought I had crumbled in an instant. The beer bottle in my hand slipped and hit the ground with a dull thud. The sound must have startled her, because Hannah's eyes flew open. She looked around until her gaze locked with mine. Her expression was a mix of shock and panic. I felt nothing but the raw sting of betrayal. The man beside her glanced between us, confused, but I didn't wait for an explanation. I turned and walked away, my chest heavy with a pain I had never felt before, and I didn't know how to process it. She didn't come home that night. The next morning, I stood there stone-faced when she finally walked through the door. Her face was a mess, smeared makeup, red eyes, tear-streaked cheeks. "Jake, please let me explain," she sobbed, but I wasn't interested in her explanations. I couldn't bring myself to listen to the excuses. She had undoubtedly rehearsed on her way home. I stood there, unmoving, as she spilled out her apologies. Then she said his name, Brandon, from work. Something inside me snapped. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't some fleeting moment of weakness. It was a choice. A series of choices she had made over and over for months. Her betrayal wasn't just about a single kiss. It was a betrayal of everything we had built together. Every promise we had made. As she finished her tearful confession, I realized I'd already made up my mind. I found myself packing a bag. "Jake, please," she begged, her voice trembling with panic. I held up a hand to stop her. "I need time to think, Hannah. Don't follow me." Her shoulders slumped into defeat as she stepped aside, and I walked out the door into a silence so heavy it was suffocating. That was the moment I knew everything had changed. Later that evening, I found myself sitting across from Ryan, my oldest friend. His expression was a mix of disbelief and pity as he took a slow swig of his beer. "That's messed up, man," he muttered, shaking his head. "I don't even know what to say." We sat in silence, the weight of the moment pressing down on us. The television droned in the background, but neither of us paid it any attention. I could feel Ryan's gaze on me, waiting for me to speak, waiting for me to say something, anything that might make sense of it all. But I couldn't. Finally, Ryan spoke again, his voice cautious. I'm not sure what you're going to do. I stared ahead, my thoughts a storm. I told her to leave, I admitted, my voice hollow. But now everything feels up in the air. We've been together for 7 years, Ryan. It doesn't have to end like this, does it? Ryan didn't answer immediately. He leaned back, studying me, then took another sip of his beer. It doesn't have to be the end, he said gently, but firmly. I'm not saying you should forgive her, but people make mistakes. Maybe there's something here worth saving. I shook my head, cutting him off. A mistake? Forgetting my birthday, that's a mistake. Missing a dinner, maybe. But this wasn't a mistake, Ryan. This was a choice. A choice she made again and again. Ryan nodded silently, not pushing further. He stood up a little while later, gave my shoulder a firm squeeze and left. The door closed behind him, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I sat there in the dimly lit living room, staring at the wedding photo on the mantel. Hannah's smile was frozen in time, her eyes filled with love and promise. It felt like a cruel joke, a picture of something that no longer existed. I picked up the frame and turned it face down tomorrow. I began sorting out what came next. For now, I just had to survive the night. Sunday morning hit like a freight train. The silence in the house was suffocating. I hadn't slept. My thoughts had kept me awake all night, replaying every image of her and Brandon, laughing, kissing, as though I didn't exist. If Hannah thought I'd just accept her sob story and empty apologies, she was gravely mistaken. I needed answers. I walked to the desk in our shared workspace where her laptop sat. It had always been our laptop, but over the years it had become more hers, mostly for work, or so I had thought. I told myself I wasn't crossing a line. She had already destroyed everything, my trust, my peace. But I couldn't stop myself. As the screen lit up, my fingers hovered above the keyboard. What was I even looking for? I didn't even know what I was looking for. Evidence? A confession? The first email I opened was dated just a few weeks ago. I can't stop thinking about last night. You're amazing. I'll figure out a way to see you soon. Promise. My stomach twisted as I scrolled through each message, each one worse than the last. Late-night meetings, hotel stays, excuses she had given me, all documented in black and white. Then I found her calendar, meticulously filled with fake work events, every detail carefully arranged to cover their secret rendezvous. The anger that had been simmering since the night before boiled over. I slammed the laptop shut and stormed over to her nightstand. In the drawer, hidden away, was her journal, a leather-bound diary. I flipped it open, scanning the neat cursive scrawled across the pages. I feel alive when I'm with him, Brandon. But the guilt is unbearable. Jake doesn't deserve this. I don't know why I do this. What's wrong with me? The words blurred in front of me as rage surged to the surface. She felt alive with him? What about me? What about us? I threw the journal back into the drawer, slamming it shut so hard the sound echoed through the empty house. By evening, I had read every email, every text, every receipt from their secret meetings. It was all there, each betrayal, each lie, laid out with cold, undeniable clarity. My phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a message from Hannah. Jake, I can't take the silence. Can we please talk? I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the reply button. Finally, I typed back. Not yet. By Monday. The storm inside me had only grown. I wasn't the kind of person to scream or throw things, but Hannah had already taken so much from me. My trust, my peace. When she texted again, asking to meet, I agreed. The house? 6 o'clock, don't be late. She arrived right on time. Her face was pale, her eyes tired, and her hesitant smile was anything but reassuring. Jake? She began, her voice tentative. Sit down, I said coldly, cutting her off. She obeyed, her hands nervously fidgeting in her lap. I placed her laptop and journal on the coffee table in front of her. What's this? I asked, my voice flat. Her face drained of color as her eyes darted between the items. Jake, she stammered, her mouth opening and closing in panic. I grabbed the journal and slammed it onto the table. Admit it, I said, my voice sharp. You wrote this, didn't you? I feel alive when I'm with him. She reached for the journal, but I snatched it away before she could touch it. No, you don't get to run from this. You owe me the truth, Hannah. For the next 20 minutes, I laid out everything. Every lie, every betrayal. By the end, she was sobbing into her hands. Why? I demanded, my voice cracking. Why wasn't I enough for you? Through her tears, she whispered. I made a mistake, Jake. I know I did. I shook my head, disgust twisting in my chest. You keep calling it a mistake, but this wasn't a mistake. This was a choice you made over and over again. Her sobs grew louder, but I felt nothing. There was no anger left, just cold, empty numbness. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she whispered, her voice barely audible. But it did, I said, standing up. And now you'll deal with the consequences. Her eyes filled with desperation as she looked up at me. Jake, please don't do this, she begged. I shook my head. It's done, Hannah. I'm filing for divorce. Pack your things and leave. This isn't your home anymore. She begged for another hour, her words desperate and tearful. But my decision didn't waver. When she finally walked out the door, I felt lighter. It was as though I could breathe again. Our life together was over, but I was still standing. For now, that was enough. Welcome everyone to Whimsy Woven Stories. Here, we explore gripping tales of real-life twists. Join our storytelling community.